Order to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, number 2, open public forum. Anybody that's not on the agenda wishing to speak? Otherwise, we'll move on. Approval of the agenda. I need a motion for approval of the agenda. Shannon makes a motion. How about a second? Gary seconds it. Any discussion on the agenda? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. Consent agenda. A, minutes, January 23rd, 2018. Recommendation to approve the minutes of the January 23rd, 2018 City Council meeting as presented. B, one-day gambling license for Corey Band Boosters. Recommendation to approve Form LG 220 application for exempt permit to conduct a one-day gambling for Corey Band Boosters for a raffle to be held April 10th, 2018 at the Sidebar and Grill. Furthermore, to waive the 30-day waiting period for a said permit. I need a motion on those.
I'll make the motion.
Doug makes a motion. How about a second?
I'll second that.
Shannon seconds it. Any discussion on that? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. Number 5. Resolution 2018-06, a resolution amending to the annual appointments. Recommendation to approve resolution 2018-06, amending the annual appointments, approving Shannon Smith as the new park board member. Do you have anything? Otherwise,
We had 2 great candidates, and the park board has recommended Ms. Smith.
Okay. I need a motion then.
I'll make a motion.
Gary makes a motion, go second.
I'll second that.
Doug seconds it. Any discussion on it? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. Splash pad progress update. Wayne and Tim.
Brian, come on, too. Yeah.
And Brian.
And Brian.
Always and Brian.
Let's go, guys.
Good evening. Maybe quick introduce yourselves.
Yeah, Wayne Simblick, Chair of the Park Board.
Tim Kramer with the River Park Foundation. And Brian. Yeah, we just want to give you guys an update and kind of get to, what we think is next. We've been meeting quite a bit and making some good progress. And Brian, we don't want to go through your proposal necessarily line item by line item.
No. Questions?
Okay. Wayne, you want to start or anything
Sure.
you want to hit on first?
Yeah, so we've been, like Tim's been saying, we've been meeting here about every other week here for the past few months, and we've come to a point where we've reached a point where we really can't go much further until we get a little more detail, and that's what we're coming forward here today to talk a little bit about the scoping study. That seems to be the next step on. We need to get into the details of what all we're going to put into this park and what site limitations we have, and because the biggest thing we're looking for is what's going to be the grand dollar amount at the end of the day. So we need to start listing out those items and getting those identified, and one way to do that is through this scoping document.
Yeah, it's the kind of the chicken and egg, and to back up a little bit to, since we got approval to buy the property, we've created the foundation, so we have the nonprofit, and then we have fundraising, corporate, kind of broke it up in 4 groups. The corporate group, pavers and bricks, grants, and grassroots. So to give you guys a little bit about kind of what we're trying to establish, we set all of our goals, I would say, aggressive on the high side. And from a corporate standpoint, that was kind of what we felt was going to be a main fundraiser for this. Local businesses, we feel that in order to get substantial dollar amounts, we're gonna have to get the local businesses on board. But we have a good diverse group too that's gonna be able to, we've already applied for, I think, a handful of grants. You know, this park, this type of project, there's a lot of grants out there that this potentially can qualify. You know, and if you hit a couple of those, that can really be a game changer. But on the corporate side, you know, our goal is to raise $700,000 through local businesses. It's a big dollar amount. An update, we have 175,000, actually slightly more than that confirmed, and that's through 8 businesses. So, and that's a tip of the iceberg. We have a lot of businesses to meet with. You know, we're kind of doing that during the day when we can schedule those meetings, but we've made good progress. We have $175,000 committed. That does not include Cold Spring Granite's contributions with what they're going to do for the project. We're still working out the details of that, but a substantial contribution from Cold Spring Granite. Pavers and bricks, we're selling 2 bricks, 2 different sizes of bricks, a small typical brick, and then a bigger brick. And really the goal there is to give an opportunity for most families, most everybody, an opportunity to contribute to this project. You can buy a small brick for $200 and put someone's name on it, your grandchildren, a favorite pet, whatever you want to do. And then those bricks will be displayed in the park. You know, we hope to be able to sell 800 bricks, raising, you know, $200,000 in bricks. Another aggressive goal, but 800 bricks, a town of 4,000. We hope to be able to do that. Grants, we talked about a little bit. I don't know if you have anything specific. I know, Wayne, you're directly involved in that subcommittee. Any take on specific ones that are out there on grants?
Yeah, for right now, we have a leftover grant from the Cold Spring Southwest project that we worked on a couple of years ago. So we have about $28,000 left on that, so hopefully we'll be able to utilize that towards some of the permanent stormwater treatment practices out there. I know Chris has applied for a couple grants as well, so we're kind of in the waiting game on hearing back on some of those, and we're still actively looking for that. So that we've kind of divided the splash pad committee up into 4 different parcels, and we got the corporate, which Tim is part of, the grants, myself, the pavers and bricks. We got a couple folks working on that, and some grassroots, like Tim was saying, with a goal of $100,000. Looking at items like taproom takeover, doing GoFundMe, tying into our Facebook page, you know, beanbag tournaments. Again, trying to scatter things throughout this summer, different events to try to generate some funds toward this project as well.
Yeah, and as we kind of started this, okay, so what's next? So the big step was, of course, identify where do we want to put this park. You know, we got unanimous support to purchase that piece of property. We have our foundations, we've set goals, we have a rough budget, and then we all sat around, okay, so what's next? And, you know, we met with Bridget a few times, Chris has been involved, we got Brian involved, and we narrowed it down to a scoping study. And basically, feel free to chime in here at any point, is that this scoping study is going to really help narrow our focus. When we say splash pad, how many square feet is a splash pad? Literally, how many amenities are we going to have? How many water features is there going to be? Is it 4-foot concrete sidewalks or 5-foot asphalt sidewalks? How many parking stalls? Lighting? All of that type of stuff. So how Stantec has proposed it to us is we have kind of, here's a series of questions, go do your homework, and then we're gonna come up and we're gonna meet with the stakeholders. And during that, we're gonna go through a whole bunch of questions and we're gonna start answering those, and then those questions will field more questions. They're gonna take that, go back, and then one of the things is update the design documents. Okay, we designed this, but that's not feasible, so we're gonna tweak that. But really get into some of those details. Is it a flow through or a recirculation? The firefighters theme, that's the theme, that's kind of the message behind the park. Well, what does it actually take to get the firefighters theme through? What colors are we gonna choose? So on and so forth. Playground, shade structures, trails, benches, parking, lighting. But then you start getting the things that maybe the committee hasn't focused a ton on, would be site constraints, site conditions. It's an old quarry site, groundwater, water and sewer, traffic, future development of the property around it, crosswalks, all of that type of stuff that Stantec has been involved with for a lot of years, and that's some professional advice. We can get that, the foundation or the group, the park board, we haven't been focusing a ton of energy on. So we meet, they go back, they take it, come back to us with a new concept plan. We can hone in on our budget, our probable cost of the project, and then kind of define a clear path to what's next. Are we ready then to take the next step? Did we uncover one or two things that need to be addressed before we can move forward? And then after that meeting, we basically would get three things. And I think this, taking it right out of your proposal, an updated master plan, a program summary, and then the preliminary opinion of probable cost, a budget. That scoping study, this first phase, is a per hour, but they're estimating based off of how many hours at $11,765 is the cost to do that. We voted on it as a group. We brought it to the park board, and you can kind of go into the park board. The park board agreed that this was the necessary step. And I think what we're here is to give you that background and give you an update, but based off of the park board's recommendation, to get you guys to approve moving forward and funding this scoping study as the next step in the splash pad. Did I miss anything?
Nope, I think you got it. Yeah, 'cause we've reached that point where we really can't go any further until we start narrowing down these details and coming up with what we think this thing is gonna cost. And the only way to get to that is through a scoping study.
I think a good analogy would be on our street projects when we do a feasibility report. It's kind of the same type of thing.
Yeah, and any details of what you guys, any key pieces that you think you will create in that scoping study that I maybe left out, or anything you want to add?
I think you covered it really well. It's basically trying to drill down. There's a great concept, but then that's really what it is at this point. It's just a concept. So actually trying to drill that down and say, what are the details within that that we really want? And so once you can drill those details down, then when it comes to design, you're set up to roll right into design. Because you've made all of these, and it's a lot of big decisions that the foundation and the park board and everyone has to make, is some high-level decisions that really direct which way the design goes.
Well, I think in an effort to make sure it's done right. You know, anytime you bring a private group in, yeah, we maybe come with some energy and maybe some passion to go raise money, but at the end of the day, we've also been advised that it's a necessary step to make sure that we keep the chain of custody. You know, it's going to be a city park at the end of the day, and to make sure that we kind of follow the protocol of how this project should move forward.
I think that one of the things to note as well is, the landscape architect who worked on both Red River and Maine will be helping with kind of the park layout and some of the park amenities, as well as someone who's, I forget exactly how many years, but a lot of years and countless splash pad experience dealing with what works, what doesn't, and so bring some good practical knowledge to that as well.
So what do you guys,
So I guess what you're asking for is, looking at our agenda, you're looking for the city to cover that cost. And I'm seeing, Chris, is this the two areas that we could possibly pull that money out of?
Yep, both very viable options.
And the two options are, so that people know, are either future capital improvement fund or the general fund, because both have a healthy balance.
Well, I certainly think it's something we need to do.
And it did say, I know that that cost would come back to us if the job was complete.
Yeah, really, it's taking that, by doing this work now, it just saves you from having to do that during design. Because if we were to just go straight into design, you'd be doing the exact same thing, trying to narrow down what we really want. And it also, initially they asked, what would a design cost be for this park? And it was really tough to put an exact cost at it because it was so wide open, and we have a great concept that that's all it was, and so it was almost impossible to put a number at what it would take to design, just because we didn't know, there are no details.
then by completing the study, it will help us dictate which route we want to go with, if we go with one engineering firm to design the entire thing, or maybe at this point that we can break it into smaller pieces that get handled in a different manner. Maybe some of it's through the foundation, some of it's through the city processes as well. So, but without the scoping study, there really isn't another way to get the information we need to have to continue moving forward. I would agree.
I personally would like it to come out of the capital improvement funds. I'd like to see that, our general funds stay where they're at. I mean, it dictates a bond rating, and you never know if all of a sudden something.
That was my thought too.
Tap into that, so.
Is that a motion?
I will make a motion that we pay for that $11,765 out of the future capital improvements fund.
Second.
Gary seconds it. Doug makes a motion, Gary seconds it. Any discussion on that? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, appreciate the support.
Thank you guys. Keep it up. Oh, where can you get the forms for the bricks?
That's a good question, and sorry, Chris, you made
I just
it.
thought
So
of
if
that.
anybody wants to get involved, in the committee, so as we broke up in 4 subcommittees, and we're gonna grassroots sell the pavers. We wanna set up booths at football games, basketball games, maybe even point of sale at the local banks. Those forms, we're finishing the final copy. It's kind of a little bit of, I shouldn't say complicated form, but we have to get the details with the nonprofit and exactly how many characters you can put on the brick. We should have final proofs of those in the next week or so. We're gonna try to funnel those through our Facebook page. We will always have that stuff at the city. The city's out so far as let us have it, so we'll have that stuff available to pick up at the city. Hopefully have a link on our Facebook page. And then if you are interested, we can get you a list of contacts, which we can have here at the city hall as well, to get on any of those subcommittees. We're actively seeking people to help. Takes an army to do this, so if you're interested and you want, stop by the city and they'll give you some contacts.
All right.
So appreciate you asking that.
Yeah, thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, number 7. Recap of the open house events. Discussing the space study. What, do you want to start out? Or do you want me to? Okay. I guess the biggest thing I got out of the open houses was that we need to do something. And maybe it's not as big as what originally was. And I was just wondering what you guys' thoughts were yet.
I agree that something needs to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it might not be as grandiose or,
No.
things like that, but there is a space issue.
Yes.
And so something needs to be done, and so we have to move forward in some way.
Mm-hmm.
We can't continue to sit on it and expect people to,
Yeah.
so.
Should we have Murray Mac do another drawing of this building with everything but the fire department in it? Should we try that?
I would like to see that, because I truly believe we could fit those 3 entities in this. I mean, yeah, we may have to add on, to the back somewhere or wherever, but I'd like to see that study.
I'd like to see that too. After talking to you about it, Doug, I think we should do that. I know you brought it up, and I think it's a good idea.
I mean, maybe we can't, but I
think it's worth it.
I find it hard to believe that we can't.
Mhm.
I would agree.
I don't know, I guess another thought I had, or I discussed it with the city administrator, is what if we moved city administration out and the library out and remodeled this for the police department and fire? Because we could all probably, and just a build, I'll just take a building that I thought of was, that old lawyer's building over here, kitty corner from the creamery. Yeah. There's a parking lot to the east of it yet. If you'd probably add on to that, be able to put the city administration and the library in that. I don't know, it was just a thought that I had.
Is that
I don't
building
know.
empty right now?
I think it's empty, isn't it?
If it's not empty, I think it only has maybe one tenant. There were cars there the other day, but I don't know if those could have been cars from the co-op.
It was
Waiting
just
for
a
construction to be done.
I don't know. I don't know if we want to do that.
Well, are they gonna, for the fee, let's say, because we've got the amount budgeted,
Mhm.
the $3,000 budgeted, for that fee, are they willing to look at two different scopes? Or,
I could find out if he's able to do both.
or give us an option,
Yeah.
you know?
I could tell him that that's what you asked me to do, is see if they could do both, the library and city moving out into maybe that parcel, so they could take a look at that parcel.
Or something
Or
similar
all
to
three
it.
here, or something similar, like what would our space need be
Yeah.
for the admin and library to move out instead of police and fire, and remodel this for police and fire. I can come back with what that would cost, if it's more than what. If you can't do both at what we've budgeted, in 2 weeks I can come back with whichever one you want to go with,
Right.
or see how
Well,
much it would cost to do both.
Yeah. I would say if it's gonna be over that, then I would at least get the one with the 3 here and move fire out for sure. Cause I think that could work.
Oh, yeah.
But that was another option I had. I don't know if that would- Especially if he doesn't think that would, all 3 of them would fit in here. It would probably be a lot cheaper to have administration and library move out rather than the other 2.
Now, when he does that study, is he gonna basically take the same square footage and whatever he's got in that, or is he gonna cut back on some of that?
He'd probably use the same, but that was just, once you decide which one you're gonna do, if it's gonna be 3 here and 1 out, or 2, regardless of the 2, then he'll drill down. Those were numbers that each department gave him, and then he used his experience from other
From
cities
Previous projects.
and tried to make them more comparable, but they don't have to be those sizes, We weren't
Right.
drilled down enough, so he probably used the ones he has.
And that would be my point, though. I mean, if you use those same numbers, yeah, maybe you can't get all 3 of them in here. But
Mhm.
what if you bring some of those, do we need 4 bathrooms, or 6 bathrooms, whatever is in there, maybe we only need 5. Well, that's a little less square footage, do we need that big of an office? Can the office be a foot by foot smaller, everything that you shrink, it may fit in that way versus if he takes the numbers he's got, it may not fit in.
Well, I can direct him to make it work for 3 here and see what would result. Because then that would tell you if
That
it
would
was
maybe
too
be a
small.
good idea.
Yeah.
Then we know if it's too small and
Yep.
Mhm.
if it doesn't fit at all.
And I'd also like to hear, based on their experience from other ones that they've done, how long they would think it would take to grow out of that
Yeah.
space,
From whatever he designed.
from whatever they would design.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then we can at least compare it to the larger piece of it and say, okay, well, for this amount of money, we're gonna be we potentially could be out of this one in 10 years, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
All right, I'll get those are my marching orders, I'll get it to him tomorrow, and then probably I would think by the 27th, I have information on it, if he thinks it's feasible.
Thank you.
That's it? Number 8, discussion of township position on fire service contract. Craig Bugenberger, have a seat.
Good evening.
Hello.
Similar spreadsheet to what we looked at
Oh, okay.
last week. Actual cost, usage, break down a couple different ways. So the top is based upon actual usage of fire and rescue. One thing we couldn't modify or change because of lack of information so far was what we had discussed as potential, not necessarily mutual aid, but shared cost calls, which would include like Assumption Campus, Highway 23 corridor, stuff that, the entire community, utilizes. So when you look at that top bar and you go under the City of Cold Spring calls, that number would get dramatically reduced by pulling out the Assumption Campus rescue calls, the Highway 23 calls, which would change the percentages on the right. Until we get the actual data, we can't calculate exactly how much that would, but that would change that formula to some degree.
For 2016, it was 150. I'm sorry, for 2017, it was 150.
For 2017, 150. So if you, take that as a, and roll it down the line, so 2016, it would probably be similar. 2015, it would probably be 140. So it gives you a comparison where you could break that out. I would imagine the Highway 23 calls probably not too crazy high, maybe half a dozen or 10. So you bring your overall numbers down. Those numbers would move down to a line similar to mutual aid. Mutual aid just gets extracted from the formula and that cost gets shared. So it would be the same type of situation. So then if you break down the comparison, next bar chart is what the entities currently are paying and what the 10-year process was, what every entity paid for the past 10 years. The following chart just changes that to a 5-year. So there's a couple ways to look at it. Do you want to take a 5-year average, a 10-year average? It shows that there's not a whole lot of difference between the two, is what that really calculates. Cost per call is listed. That's what we currently are paying per call, per entity. And the bottom chart would be the calculation if each entity paid based upon usage. That's what each entity would have paid over the past 10 years. So it's really a breakdown of pay for what you use.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead, Bill.
Question before we get into this more. When you're saying we take these calls, the Highway 23 corridors, are you also talking businesses? Schools? So how do you decipher that it's not the township person that we have a call for at the restaurant, at church, at the school, that it's not a township kid that we're going to?
It's the same story of how do you know it's not a city person that's in a car accident on a township road?
Right, but you take the number of calls that are city proper versus the township, your odds of it being a township person in a call in Cold Spring at the school and businesses, church, whatever, is got to be 75% better chance with the number of calls that we
Well,
have.
if you look at the population statistics, there's no way that 75% of those calls are township people.
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, if you had taken the number of calls where we have, like, a kid at school, or, instead of, say we have 10 calls there, I would bet that we probably, 7 of those 10 calls are probably, or at least 50% of those calls are probably somebody from the township, or not Cold Spring proper, and it could be somebody from another school. Granted, it's Cold Springs school, but again, you're taking that school and you're penalizing the city to have that school in their district.
If you take the overall number of calls and you would, even if you were to try to come up with some sort of a formula, the overall scope, I'd be willing to bet that's a fairly insignificant number. And there's probably a way to try to calculate for that. We're not asking to do anything that's not fair. But when you look at, based on a percentage of what the usage is for what the pay is, there's a very significant difference there. Because you look at the third chart, the second or third chart, that's what is getting paid. If you look at the bottom chart, that's the percentage of usage. So if you take Collegeville, for instance, Collegeville currently pays 21% of the budget, but only uses 4% of the service. So, you know,
Correct.
that's a
If-
huge
if-
gap.
If those numbers are right. If in that 83% of the Coastman calls aren't township people, that number could be 10%. If you take for instance.
So you're
the
saying
calls-
the Cold Spring number would go from 83 to 10%?
No, I'm not saying that, I'm saying 10% of that Coastman calls could possibly be township.
And maybe something
people.
like that needs to get calculated into the formula, you know, because I've got no doubt that that potentially could happen, but it can work both ways. You know, rescue calls out on the lakes, rescue calls out on the road. You know, so how do you grasp at straws? If we were talking about 1 or 2% points here, you'd have a huge point there. But when it's this enormous of a gap between the city's responsibility and the township's responsibility, you know, there's room to give you a buffer like that.
So all, and then, sorry if I keep asking.
No,
but-
keep,
No, that's what the purpose of this is, so everybody understands what.
So is this taking into consideration the equipment that's bought?
Right now, these calculations for 2016 has the 4% fund, plus it has $52,000 worth of capital improvement built into these numbers. So it would be, you know, there would have to be a negotiation of, you know, what is the fair value for the capital improvements, you know, the 4%, and that could be something that you come up with a number and say, okay, for the next 3 years, we're gonna include $50,000 a year, $60,000 a year for capital improvement. And then set that up on a negotiation every, you know, X amount of years. But, you know, or put some sort of a limit on the percentage that it can get raised. You know, set it at 50% with a 1% max increase per year, something along those lines. You know, it's basically, we're just trying to make this a fair playing field and have it good for everybody. We don't want something that's unfair to the city, but we don't want something that's unfair for the townships.
anything else from council? Well, we got this we can look at. I mean, we can discuss it further. I don't know if you want to set up a workshop and discuss this, but, or just let city come up with something.
And like was discussed at the last meeting, you know, there's going to be a substantial change like this. We understand there's a financial hit, and there could easily be a phase-in period, you know, where you set it up and it starts 1 year, and then over the years it changes, because, you know, when you look at the numbers here, it's a pretty substantial hit to the city's budget. And we understand that, so we're not saying, you know, this would have to happen right now. Let's phase it in over the next 3 years or whatever it takes to make it an easier transition for the city. And this is just, like I said, it's raw data. It's a little crude and elementary right now just because of, you know, we don't have all of the information to plug into the spreadsheet. You start pulling numbers off the city and putting them into a shared cost line item, that's going to change it. But this is just based on the information that we had.
I think maybe a workshop would be important so that the city knows where we all stand on it.
At least we have direction in the next meeting from you guys, where we should go or how we should do this. And that's all right with you guys. I don't know when is our next meeting with you guys? 22nd?
The HTC does not meet on the 21st at 5:30, which would normally be the time before planning. That'd be next Wednesday. That would give time to post a special we'll reach out to you. No.
You guys wanna do that?
That works for me.
Looks for me.
All right,
We're looking at the 21st.
21st, 5:30.
Sounds good.
Any other questions you guys have for me?
No. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, if you do come up with any questions, I know Dave, you know how to get a hold of me, otherwise it's on Collegeville's website, feel free to give me a call, give me a text, whatever, I can answer, try to answer any questions that you come up with. All right?
All right,
Thank you, thanks for your time.
Yep. Number 9. Approve.
They're here because of this.
They're here because of that. Oh, okay. I'm sitting there, them guys are sitting down, it's not public works. Okay, here we go. Approve ordinance number 364 to amend the significant industrial user sewer rate.
Little background on it.
Yeah.
There really wasn't a whole lot of increase in the actual amount of money. It went up like maybe 1 cent, 2 cent, that sort of deal. But we're adding the phosphorus. The MPCA is cracking down on our phosphorus limits, and we need to start having some control or penalty for phosphorus coming in from, well, right now the only SIU is a brewery, so from them. And then also doubling the rate if they go over their SIU in flow, TSS, BOD, and phosphorus. And that's the new part, and there needs to be some form of penalty because they have to do a better job on their end of pre-treatment because they're sending us stuff that's so high. I think there was a stat here, in 2017 they went over 1 month of BOD, 3 months of TSS, and 1 month of flow. And our wastewater plant can't handle that loading sometimes, so either there's going to have to be an expansion or they need to start doing a better job of pre-treatment. And I think the only way to do that is having penalties for it, so that's what this is about.
All right. Recommendation to approve ordinance number 364, amending the city code of Cold Spring by adjusting the industrial user sewer rate. I need a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Shannon makes a motion.
Seconded.
Gary seconds it. Any discussion on this? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? That motion carries. Now, number 10, Public Works Director report. John Stevie, along with Ryan.
All right.
And Brian.
I noticed, Brian, you're not even and Brian after city engineer. City engineer.
Oh, it's the city engineer.
Just a question mark.
The first thing I have is, we did put in the budget for a new copier printer at Public Works. The one we have is, I believe, an old one from City Hall, probably how many years ago. It doesn't work properly. We can't send emails, we don't get faxes. You know, if we have to email documents, we usually come up here and have Lois or somebody do it up here. And now it's not even printing, so it's good timing here. We got some bids from Marco and then Coordinated Business Solutions. And Coordinated Business Solutions was the cheaper of the two. Kyocera Ecosystem 6530 for what it's worth. And the salesman's actually a Springer's baseball player, so that was kind of cool. But so I do need approval on that, new one of $29.90, and that is split 3 ways between streets, water, and wastewater. Budget line item 6311.
Okay, recommendation to approve the purchase of a new printer copier from Coordinated Business Solution for a total of $2,990, and furthermore to be paid out of line item number 6311, being split equally between the streets, water, and wastewater budgets. I need a motion on that.
I'll make that motion.
Doug makes a motion. How about a second?
I'll second that.
Shannon seconds it. Any discussion on this? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries.
Well, number 7, distribution design. Last week, Brian, myself, Tanya, and then 2 other water guys from Stantec met and started talking about well number 7 and how it's gonna tie into the system and maybe some ways we can make it work without spending a pile of money. And they came up with a great way of tying into the old city well house, where 4 and 5 are. Because we would be taking well 5 offline, being able to just tie into the pipe where it comes into the well house. So the structure's there. Some of the components inside might need to be changed around a little bit, but basically what we need approval on is Stantec to design that to get it to the well house now, because the original plan was to put another well house up where the well 7 was drilled. Kind of like an hourly deal, they can get it going, just to make sure it's all gonna work out, and then the design is there, so when the time comes, it can be done. You want to add anything on that? or-
Yeah, I think the only thing is timeframes are pretty tight, looking to drill.
Yeah, trout, I mean, that was part of the water update, but trout, with the cold weather, they just keep getting pushed back, and they know the high priority of this, but they're still shooting for the end of February here to drill. But it's not only that, it's the components to run the well. The electrical panel can be 3 to 6 months out. And with this design, we should be able to get rolling on the electrical panel and get that going, so it fits in our timeline with the brewery expansion and stuff.
Getting Excel to get power out, just kind of getting some of the balls rolling already before so we're ready when the well is drilled.
But the nice part about this is, with this route, it's gonna save the city a significant amount of money, because the structure's there already, a lot of the controls are there. So it should be a great deal for the city. But we just gotta get the ball rolling. The brewery's timeline's kind of pushing back, which is good, it's helping us a lot. So it should all work out hopefully in the end here, but just kind of need some.
All right. Recommendation to approve instructing Stantec to start the design process for the distribution system and well house controls. I need a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Doug makes a motion, how about a second?
I'll second that.
Shannon seconds it. Any discussion on it?
Do we know cost?
Do we know the cost at all? It's just a per hour?
It's just gonna be an hourly deal to get it rolling.
Okay.
And then the reason we looked at that is there's a lot of moving parts to this, and trying to get things going ahead of time, we're trying to look at the old plans, make sure that things are gonna work, and so the timelines are really kind of dictating, we just gotta keep moving on it, and there is no set design at this point. It's not simple like a well house. I don't have a ballpark number. It would be, the piping cost to get from new 7 over to the well house at 4, we'd be working with getting power there, and then whatever changes we need to make within the existing well house. And then any work we would do at the well with pitless or pump controls, integrating into the SCADA system. So, and then also any work, whatever the city's end of disconnecting one of our old wells and getting it ready to go to the brewery.
I think a ballpark number for the scope of this project, if things go well tying into the old well house, we're looking at $200,000.
That's construction.
Yeah. As far as just the scope for them to figure out the design of distribution and stuff, that I don't know, but the whole project is, I would say, around that $200,000 mark.
But is it reasonable for us to have some kind of an idea of what this might cost for your services, Brian, before we vote to approve or not?
No, absolutely, I think it's reasonable. I can come with an estimate. Like I said, there are a lot of moving parts, so that was the difficult part too.
I realize that's difficult, but even if it's an estimate to the best of your ability, then at least we know what we're talking about. 3,000, 80,000, 200,000, to give us an idea of where we're at.
Yeah, well, absolutely, I understand that,
That would be okay.
Are you asking about the hours, how many hours it's gonna take to do the design, or the project itself? Because right now,
The design.
the
If I
design.
understand correctly, what we're about to vote on is to gives Brian the authority to go ahead and start doing the design work.
Correct.
And I think it would be important to have an idea of what that will cost. Typically, we have an idea of what things cost before we green light.
Yeah, and this only came up last week when we met, which was Thursday?
Wednesday or Thursday.
Last week, Wednesday
so-
and Thursday, and there wasn't enough time to get that number together. Because this idea just got brought up then, and it's a great idea, and it's gonna be great for the city in the end, but it only got brought up then, and there wasn't enough time there to get something going.
So, are we going to create a big delay here if we don't approve this tonight and we approve it at the next council meeting? I mean, what's the urgency in doing this?
The panel, the electrical panel design. I mean, it's 3 to 6 months for the panel to start. Every 2 weeks is gonna hurt, but
And maybe what we could look at doing is just looking at, right now, moving ahead on critical components, those that are on that critical path. And there's a number of other things like the piping design, some of those things we don't need to start immediately.
Okay,
And then I can
So
come-
we give you approval to start on the critical elements now, and then at the next council meeting, you could give us an update on it.
Absolutely. And that's my only big concern, is just that we can keep moving on those critical
Yeah.
path
Yeah.
items.
Is that okay with you?
I will
You're-
amend my motion to them just work on the critical areas
Yeah. And then get us an update.
and give us an
Yeah,
update.
next meeting, I'll
Okay.
work on
Yeah.
Any other discussion on it then? One thing I got, well number 5, that's going to the brewery, right?
it depends on what the results are of well 7.
Oh, okay.
And currently well 4 is higher nitrate than well 5. You know, it's just fluctuating, it's constant fluctuating. Month to month, you don't know. I mean,
Okay.
1 month 4 is high, 5 is lower, and it's the opposite. But historically, 5 has been higher, and that's why we initially want to do 5, but
Okay. It just depends on what 7 comes.
we just have to
out
hope 7
Okay.
is good.
All right, that was just the question I had. Okay. Then we need to vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries.
I touched on Schultz delay, and for that, we also discussed some treatment stuff with the Stantec Water guys, and they're actually going to be putting together a scope of the project, treatment itself, and we should have something for you next meeting on that, so. That's all I got.
That's all you got. Any questions for John? Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Number 11, city engineer. That's all it says. Brian Lynch.
I mean, the other thing I had for you tonight was just an update on, we talked last week about the Petro Fund reimbursement and possible appeal. Talked with Braun, who is our consultant on that, who helped us prepare it. So they're gonna help us prepare our response back, essentially our appeal. If we can come back with a good response, a lot of times they just end up, if we can substantiate our claims, they come back and maybe raise the dollar amount, and we'll take it from there. There were a couple of items. One of them was, their first one was, they set a maximum on hauling costs, and that's just, they kind of set a cap, and there's really nothing you can do to get over that cap. So they set, their maximum hauling cost is $121 a load plus 30 cents per cubic yard per mile. So if we're over that, and the bids we got are over that, we're kind of just stuck with that extra. One of the downsides of we need to get this done in a hurry, and so you get a couple bids, but we could have got 10 bids and maybe nobody comes in at that cap that they set. And then talking with these guys, it's kind of, some of the caps on some of their things are fairly low for what the industry actually charges, so. That was our first place we got dinged. The second one was contractor markup, which we have to do for our contracts. We're allowed to give them the prime contractor a markup for administering this. They don't reimburse for it. Just kind of the cost of doing business. The next one was the cost for upgrading the piping and gaskets. That was a bigger chunk. They had a little over $16,000 that they denied. Saying we didn't have the right, we didn't show them the testing that we have. I talked with Braun, and said, we have the testing for it, we're gonna contest this one. Basically, when they're digging in that zone of the pipe, there's tests they do to prove that there was petroleum contamination. We have those, so we're gonna be fighting that. That's the big one I wanna get back, because I still feel we made the right decision to upgrade the piping in there, to put it to a ductile iron with a better gasket so that the petroleum doesn't have a chance to degrade it. So I still feel that was absolutely the right move, and I want to be reimbursed for the city making the correct move to protect our water in this one. So we're going to go after that one. We had a 10% cost reduction for saying we didn't get 2 competitive bids. We did, so we'll be spending on try to resubmit that and say, here's our bids we got. And then, as well as we need to clarify, they had a reduction for one of the contractors not being registered with the Petro Fund. At the time, it was I was told that they were, so I'm going to be doing some investigating into that. So that would be the, for Braun, this is all part of what their fee was for the Petro Fund application. On my side, we probably have a couple hours worth of time to help pull some stuff, coordinate it, get it back in. If there's any questions on it, otherwise, I guess I'd like to get your approval to go ahead and begin our appeal. We have, I think, until the middle of March.
Do we need a motion on that? I need a motion on that. Gary makes a motion to go have city engineer go ahead with that. I need a second. Shannon seconds it. Any discussion on it? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries.
That's all I have.
That's all you have?
No other-
Any questions for Brian? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Number 12, Police Department report. Chief Bloom. Good evening.
Mr. Mayor, Council. Good evening. First off, just to go through some of the numbers for December. In the city of Cold Spring, we had 347 total incidents, 27 medicals, 12 suspicious activities, 166 traffic stops with 188 warnings and 15 citations. In those traffic stops, we had 19 narcotic violations, a DWI, and a warrant arrest, and then 156 miscellaneous calls for service. And then also in Richmond, there were 82 total incidents, 6 medicals, 3 suspicious activities, 37 traffic stops with 42 warnings and 10 citations. In those traffic stops, there was one stop where one of the officers recovered enough methamphetamine to forfeit the vehicle, and then also a DWI for in December, and then 36 calls for service. One of the next things, approval for the purchase of the K-9. We picked up the K-9 last week, 2 weeks ago now. Training started yesterday. Things seem to be going pretty well. So now we need to approve the purchase of the K-9. And just a little background, all the money for the dog itself, and that total $15,350 includes the purchase of the dog and all the required training behind it. And all those funds were received through donations towards the city from different businesses, organizations, and individuals. So.
Recommendation to approve the purchase of the new K-9 for the department at a cost of $15,350, and furthermore to be paid from donations to the department. I need a motion on that. Gary makes a motion. How about a second?
Second.
Shannon seconds it. Any discussion on it? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
Right. Is there a name for it?
Yes.
Is it public?
Have you released it yet?
So we were originally supposed to get the dog on the 4th of February, which would have gave us plenty of time between receiving the dog and training to get, because the elementary schools helped us pick it out, to get up there and introduce him to all the kids. Since we only picked it up a week and a half ago now, we were going to do it at the end of last week, but all the principals were down in the cities for training the last half of last week, so it didn't work out. All the dogs are gonna be in town training next week sometime is the game plan, so hopefully that day we get up there to the school and then it'll be public to everybody. So it's just been a scheduling conflict back and forth to get it out there, but yes. He does have a name. And again, yeah, I'd just like to thank everybody and also Granite City Pet Hospital and Dr. Jeff Nelson. He's donated 100% of the care, surgeries and everything for the dog, not only our dogs, but several dogs in the area. So he's been a great individual to work, or business to work with there too, which helps make the whole program possible for us, so. Next is approval for a radar for the new squad. Just a little background there, the last, I think, 2 radars we received through TZD. So it didn't cost the city anything to put them into the squad cars. They've now changed their program and that's no longer an option. So this is the first one that we've at least had to buy in the last couple of rotations, so.
Okay. Recommendation to approve the purchase of a DSR-2 radar for a cost of $2,747.10, and furthermore to be paid out of the police budget line item 6311. I need a motion on that.
I'll make a motion.
Doug makes motion. Second?
Second.
By Shannon. Any discussion on this? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. There you go.
Thank you. And then just one of the last things, it's starting to warm up now, but there was a rash when it was that frigid, 15, 20 below zero, where people were leaving their cars, run outside of businesses, run outside of their houses, especially the businesses along 23. People would be driving by, see a vehicle running, go and check and see if it was unlocked. We had it happen several times where they'd come back and somebody had gone through their car. If you stop at a business, if you're letting your car run, just if it's possible, make sure you're locking your vehicle up when you're away from it. So just a reminder to everybody. So then hopefully it gets warm that we don't have to do that soon. But that's all I have.
Thank you.
Any questions? No?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Number 13, City Administrator Report.
First one, CETA update. As you know, our executive director of the EDA is retiring in May, and we budgeted for CETA to come in to be a consultant for community and economic development. They have assigned a staff person. Her name is Reva Mishke. She came to EDA yesterday and introduced herself as part of their preparation to take over. She'll be at every EDA from now till then. She's looking at community events. She'll probably be at Showcase just to introduce herself and get to know businesses around town. She was hoping to come tonight, but apparently she couldn't, but she will come to a city council meeting to introduce herself. She lives in St. Cloud, used to be a city administrator for Upsala, so she has kind of that background. And I think she did well, if you have a comment.
Very well, yeah.
She's a good fit. Good for us. They just hired her, she'll be consulting with us and with Frazee. So she has to drive from St. Cloud to Frazee. We're the easy one. Next one, one of the tasks, or the majority of the work that our part-time staff person has been doing is going through all of our records for what can be destroyed now through record retention. The city adopted the statewide record retention form in 2004-ish, but never actually went through the documents, so now we've been going through it. And cities are allowed to store things electronically as long as you approve it. And so we've got it all electronically stored, we haven't thrown anything away, but I am asking for approval to store our government records electronically.
Okay, recommendation to approve resolution 2018-07, a resolution authorizing electronic storage of government records. I need a motion on that.
Make a motion.
Shannon makes a motion. How about a second?
I'll second it.
Gary seconds it. Any discussion on this? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries.
All right, the next one, there's the safety and loss control workshops that get put on every year. And John, Chris, Jason, and I would like to go. there's an afternoon session, First Amendment and some HR stuff. I can't be in two places, so Chris said she would take over the HR and I'll go to the First Amendment track. And so I'd like permission for all of us to attend those. And I sent it to you. If any of the information looks good to you, we can also register city council members as well, so. I was hoping to register probably this Friday, or by next Friday, I believe, so if you are interested, let me know, and I can also add you to the list.
And that's in St. Cloud.
It's in St. Cloud.
April 26th there.
Yeah.
Recommendation to approve attendance at the 2018 Safety and Loss Control Workshop by the city administrator, finance director, police chief, and public works director. I need a motion on that.
Make a motion.
Gary makes a motion. Second?
I'll second it.
By Doug. Any discussion on this? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries.
I have two more trainings that just popped up that I'd like to talk to you about. There's a shoreline and floodplain management and administration training from the DNR that they do annually. And there's one next Wednesday, which would be the day of planning, and now our workshop in Fergus, so I couldn't go to that because that's till 4 o'clock and I would never get back in time. There's one, the date of our next city council meeting, it's in Golden Valley and it's done at 4 in the last hour or so with something. I don't have to stay for depending on the weather, but I could easily get back in time, so I'd like to go to that one in Golden Valley. So I guess asking approval, it's free, so it's just my time. If we want to
Need
make
a
a
motion on
motion.
that?
Sure.
Can I get a motion on that?
I'll make a motion to approve the training.
Shannon makes a motion to approve the training for city administrator. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Doug seconds it. Any discussion on that? With all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against?
And the next,
Carries.
okay, the next one's not really a training, the Minnesota Clerks and Finance Officers Association and CFOA, which we are a member of, sent out an email the other day looking for people to be on their subcommittee for their record retention. And I thought, well, that's what I've been doing for the last 4 months. I'm getting pretty good at it. So I did apply, and they have to make a decision. So I'll let you know if they have offered it to me. Who will have to probably approve that. So there'll be some meetings I'll have to go to, some law review and some other reviews that people want. You know, basically they'll help assist the state in updating that record retention plan every couple of years, and so that's what this committee does. So when I find out if I've actually been approved to be a member, I'll bring it back to you. And that's it.
That's it. Any questions for Bridget? Otherwise, we'll move on to number 14. List of bills and additions. Recommendation to review and accept payment of the accounts payable according to the list and supplemental list presented by city staff. I need a motion to pay the bill. Gary makes a motion. How about a second?
I'll second that.
Shannon seconds it. Any discussion on it? With all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries. General questions and comments from city council. Doug? Shannon?
Didn't have anything tonight.
Gary? Me either. Number 16. Motion to adjourn. Doug makes a motion. How about a second?
Second.
Shannon seconded. Any discussion on this? Otherwise, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion carries.